Good morning, everyone. We are going to wait a couple minutes for folks to join, and then we will get started here shortly. Yeah, and good morning. If you're just joining, we are waiting a minute or two for all the folks to join. We appreciate you joining this morning or afternoon, depending on where you are, but we will get started here shortly. All right. It is three past the hour, so we'll go ahead and get started with the webinar today. Thank you all for joining. And just so you know, this session will be recorded. So if you are joining late or need a recording or need to drop, we can send it after. We do welcome any questions during the presentation, and we will answer those towards the end. The main goal today is to provide an overview of the Restrata platform and what you can do with Factal data in that platform. So just about proportional to the size of the logos on the screen, Restrata will be sharing the majority of the time today to give you an idea of their platform. We noticed that many of the folks who are attending the webinar have either seen Factal before, have seen a demo, or are current customers. So welcome and thank you so much for joining. Because of that, we won't be doing a full demo of the Factal platform today. But if you are interested in learning more and seeing the Factal platform in action, please reach out to me. I will provide my email in the chat, and I would be more than happy to give you a quick view of the platform to check it out. Um, by way of introduction, my name is Brian Goss. I know I've met many of the folks who have joined today. I work on the sales development and partnership side with Factal. I've been with the team for about 5 years now, and I'm based in the Seattle area. On the webinar today, I'm joined by Tim Willis. He's the VP of Partnerships at Restrata. I'm going to have him introduce a little bit about Restrata before we get started, and then I'm going to dive into some of our editorial coverage in Iran, and the points that I'd like to focus on are how we leverage community and all of the information and preparation that goes into that coverage.
Thank you, Brian. Good afternoon, good morning to everyone, and thank you to Brian and the Factal team for having me on the webinar. So, my name, as Brian says, Tim Willis. I'm head of partnerships at Restrata. So, I've been working very closely with Brian and the Factal team on the integration and the partnership that we have with between the two companies. In terms of Restrata, who we are as a company, very briefly, and I'll be touching on this a little bit later on in the session, of course, in a bit more detail. But very briefly, Restrata is a tech company, essentially. And we have a software platform called resilienceOS, which we launched a number of years ago to address the operational challenges that we saw security professionals, resilience, crisis management professionals grappling with in the industry as they responded to events. And broadly speaking, those can be categorized in the three buckets, if you like, that are on the screen in front of you now. So one is the challenge of access to information when you need it. So bringing all your data into a single system so that you've got an understanding of what your exposure is and giving you the information, access to the data that you need when you need to respond, which enhances your people visibility, right? That's often the crux when you're dealing with a situation, is understanding where are my people, who do I have there, how do I communicate with them. So helping companies communicate with confidence, and then also helping them make sense of the threat and risk data that they are receiving. There are a lot of sources of information that you might receive in a crisis. You're getting your Factal alerts. It's understanding the so what. What does that actually mean to me as an organization, and helping you prioritize to really accelerate your response to an escalating situation, to a security incident, and drive efficiencies. And that's what we'll be looking at in the second half of the webinar. Brian, back to you.
Thanks, Tim. And so just a little background about Factal. I know a lot of folks are familiar with us, but we came out of breakingnews.com, which was an NBC site. We were founded in 2018. We now have newsrooms with an editorial staff that I'm going to go into detail about here in a second in Seattle, New York, and London. And since we've started, we are now trusted by security teams across all industries and sectors. And something really great about my job is I get to meet folks from all over the world and all over industry. Where Factal sits in the market for risk intelligence, we know there's a lot of options out there. What Factal really brings is the human element to the technology that you're looking at. So, sourcing social media, bringing together live data, but the human verification piece, the geolocation, creates actionable intelligence that allows your team to act faster. So, if you want a chance to look more at the Factal platform, again, I'm more than happy to help. But today I wanted to talk a bit about our coverage in Iran and highlight how our editorial team does their job and what makes them so unique in the space of risk intelligence. So prior to the Iran conflict happening, we saw a buildup of military ships in the Gulf of Oman, around the Strait of Hormuz, and that was early indication that there was going to be something happening in that area. Now, we've been following the conflicts in the Middle East for years now. We have a dedicated team that covers the Middle East and North Africa. Some of them are native Arabic speakers. They're looking at thousands of sources. They're continually collating quality sources in those areas, and they're looking at dozens of different social media channels. The key thing with a conflict like this is not just telling you what's happening, but also what's not happening. So the editorial team brings clarity to these fast-paced events by providing editorial notes. And through the coverage of this conflict that's still ongoing, we provided dozens and dozens of editorial notes, which tells you what's not necessarily just happening, but what we're seeing reports of, and providing context and clarity to those events. For example, the UAE tends to downplay anything that happens to their facilities or infrastructure. And so understanding the nuance and working those areas for a long time, we understand that the data coming from certain sources isn't necessarily the truth on the ground. And so we bring additional clarity to that through editorial notes. Another way that they bring clarity to those incidents and understanding of the data is severity ratings. So on the Factal platform, we're rating all of the incidents from a severity rating of 1 through 5, and there is a lot of nuance involved with the ratings. A missile strike in one area may be different impacts, or a geopolitical event may impact an area acutely different than other places in the world. So when you are using the Factal platform and looking at our severity ratings, understand that there's a lot of context that goes into that and continually updating based on the geopolitical events in the area and the type of incidents that are happening. And beyond just what's happening within the war zone itself, there are knock-on effects, of course, that disrupt travelers, announcements from state departments, and restrictions to areas where business can happen. Of course, the Strait of Hormuz, everyone's familiar with. So Factal is looking beyond just not just the conflict itself, but the knock-on effects. And that's where platforms like Restrata really come into play, where you can take that data that's happening maybe just outside that geopolitical area or that region, and you can understand where folks are being disrupted around the globe when there is an incident of this size. One of the pillars that Factal was started on was leveraging community and bringing in the security community to help facilitate both the editorial process and also to provide context around events. So, not just our chat feature, which allows you to discuss directly with our editorial team about what's happening. We've had thousands of chat messages since this conflict happened. We create a instant chat specifically for large events, such as the Iran conflict, which allows teams to come together, understand what's happening in real time, and directly talk to our editorial team 24/7. Lastly, we have flash briefings that we've introduced in the last year or so, which is another way to add clarity to events that are happening, where we invite our members to come to a quick briefing with that highly skilled editorial team to get an update of what's happening most recently in those areas, the social platforms that we're looking at, the context of those events. And really any updates to help you then facilitate the messaging that you're giving to your team and understanding who's being impacted in this area. So lastly, before I hand this off to Tim, I just wanted to share some feedback that we got from our members about the coverage in Iran. And I would say the key thing is that Factal provides the highest level of accuracy of these events. It's a tool that can help save lives, and it's really the de facto or default for folks when they're looking for the truth when it comes to these events that can create chaos and uncertainty. So, Tim, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you.
Thank you, Brian. And I'll bring up my screen now. And so for the second half or the second part of this webinar, what we're going to be looking at is how we can take Factal information, the intelligence that the Factal team deliver so strongly, and really help operationalize that and turn it into actionable intelligence. So before I carry on, Brian, can I just confirm that you've got my screen up?
You are good.
Perfect. I'll keep going then. So people are, I'm sure everyone on this call is familiar with the concept of intelligence-led security operations. It's a very common phrase, and rightly so. Access to timely, accurate intelligence is crucial in order to react effectively and appropriately, right? If the information you're getting is not reliable, it's not trustworthy, you're pursuing red herrings, and you're wasting time and you're being inefficient. So what we're looking at here is helping clients answer the so what. So they receive the alert from Factal. It's a trusted source. They know that Factal has issued an alert that a thing has happened. We know that has happened, right? There's been a missile intercept. There's been a drone attack. Whatever the situation is, what does that mean to me as an organization, and what do I need to do about it? That's the piece that we're really looking at here. So what we've got up is our demo environment. What this is showing is, so these are current Factal alerts. But we're kind of going to run through a couple of, I guess, workflows, if you like, of how this could have been used and in fact was used by some of our clients during that Iran escalation. So what we've got is a number of effectively a simulation, if you like, of a global multinational corporation, people clusters around the world, and loads of facilities and sites around the world with live Factal alerts coming in. So all of those of you who are familiar with Factal, it's the content that you know. We've got the links to the original sources, everything that you're familiar with Factal data. But if we think back to the escalation at the end of February, when the Middle East did escalate, and that was Saturday morning UK Western Europe time, later at night Friday night US time, the classic time that there is a crisis that we all have to deal with. It's never on a Monday morning when we're sitting down at our desks ready for the week ahead with a cup of coffee. So when that news started to come in, that information started to come in, what a lot of companies do is they use a combination of human and software, right? So the software is often going to be a version of looking at your travelers. That's often the first port of call. A version of this, you've got your itinerary-based travel tracking. Nothing new really, but you can go in here. We can have a look at a particular country. So let's say we know we've got exposure to the United Arab Emirates. We look at that. We download our travel document. And that's useful. That tells us who's traveling now in the next 7 days, whatever the time period is that we're interested in. But that's only a slice of the problem that we're dealing with. Because particularly in the situation that we saw in the Middle East, a lot of companies have got regional headquarters there in Dubai, in the UAE region. They've got operations in Qatar and Kuwait and Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. So a lot of organizations were dealing with a fairly broad, fast-moving situation with huge exposure, but they didn't have an accurate grasp of what that exposure actually was, which goes back to the point that I made in the introduction of helping clients actually integrate the information that you typically already have access to in an organization, you typically already have in an organization, but as a security team may not have access to. And that includes often the HR data. So what we can do is look up a geofence. So we could use our drawing tools if we didn't have one saved and select a particular area, or we go in, we've got the UAE selected now, and we click on the Insight dashboard. So this is now showing the way that we can start to interrogate very rapidly our full exposure in the UAE. And you can see on the map, we've got the clusters of people data, the sites and facilities in there. But I've now got a summary that I've got over 1,300 people in there, 59 locations, a number of risk alerts. But I also have a breakdown of the sources of information. Why do I know that I've got over 1,300 people there? It's because I've got access to app-based GPS tracking. I've got itinerary-based tracking. I've got HR data with work locations, home locations. And I realize that there are sometimes privacy issues. We work through these issues with our clients, particularly on home locations. But if we look outside the Middle East, hybrid working, people working from home, we now, the duty of care aperture has expanded. And when we're looking in the Middle East, a lot of the clients that we were working with were dealing with a situation of expats, with dependents, with family members, trying to understand their exposure of people that they had a responsibility to outside of just the work environment. So you can segment this if you need to. But what I'm going to do now is just basically go in and essentially show how quickly we can start to get a message out. So we could select a template if we need to. We choose the delivery channels that might be required. You see we've got voice and Teams as well, which I'm not going to select at this point. Templates if you want, or we use the AI alert assistant. And I'm just going to create a generic impact alert or safety poll. Now, one thing to point out, of course, is I've just gone in here looking at an area. If this was triggered by a Factal alert, we'd be using that radius, we'd be looking at the exposure to that incident, and we'd be pulling that information from the Factal alert into this message as well. So the recipient would also be understanding, right, there's been a drone attack or whatever the particular incident may be. Fully editable if you want, but I'll click through to next. We have a final preview if you want of your app, email, and SMS configuration, and I click on send now. Final confirmation. I'm not actually going to send in the purpose of the demo, but the key point to take away from this is the speed with which we can, one, get visibility of our exposure to, in this case, a fairly big scale, fast moving event. We're not looking at a sort of tight exposure to a single kinetic event. We're looking at a regional conflict. Who have I got across the UAE? How quickly can I get a message out? I've been talking over it, but hopefully you've seen from that within a few clicks, in a minute, you can get your first message out to everyone who is exposed to that particular or in that region. As I come back out of this, just to touch on this as well, when we look at software, the value of software is helping give you precision of what you're dealing with. And that's one of the things that we are doing here with our clients, is also showing them not just who we're sending it to, but even before you've sent it, who's unreachable. So as concurrent activity, you can get those contact lists developed. Go to HR, go to whoever in the organization is responsible for it to say, I need contact details for these 185 people. Because we know that, speaking to organizations that we're starting to engage with now, a big problem that they've had is, one, getting access to the information, downloading it from different data sources, consolidating it, uploading it into their comms platform, and then sending it out. And only after the fact do they realize that some of the messages didn't even get through because of data quality issues. So what we've really looked at now is the human and the software interaction, right? Those are sort of two of the key pillars in terms of responding and turning intelligence and the information that Factal produces into action and operationalizing it. Software, as I said, gives the precision. Humans exercise the judgment in terms of how you respond. But if we add the third pillar of artificial intelligence, we now start to get the ability to really get a lot of processing and interrogation and interpretation of information that organizations are dealing with. So I'm using exactly the same geofence. In this case, I'm analyzing with Rosa. So Rosa is resilienceOS Assistant, which is our AI overlay on top of the data that you as a specific client, as a specific organization are using. And you'll see as this is now interrogating, it's very similar to ChatGPT, Claude, things that you may be familiar with using. It's showing you what it's doing, the workflows, the prompts, what it's thinking about. But the crux of this is the data that it's interrogating. This is the data that you have chosen to put into the system. It is your people data from the sources that you have chosen, travel data, HR data, access control, whatever it may be, Factal alerts, because you trust it. You may have other information that you brought in as well, your own country guides. You may be working with a travel assistance provider who may have country briefs. They may have additional alerting, which provides advice and suggestions. That's all the information that Rosa is now interrogating and pulling. As you see, it's populating live in front of you in seconds that would typically take a single person hours to actually do. And when you're dealing, as we said earlier, and Brian was talking through the alerting that they issued when the situation started to escalate, very fast-moving event, multiple countries impacted, a lot of companies with significant exposure. So you're trying to make sense of that on a weekend, out of hours, of what this actually means to you as an organization. So again, just to reiterate, this is the current view based on what we've got from Factal and a few other data sources coming in here. But you can see here, situation overview, active threat intelligence. We've got the Factal alerts, a few critical incidents, drone strike at the Baraka nuclear power plant, a few others in there. Excuse me, a couple of country risk assessments, asset exposure, all of those facilities that we saw earlier in the geofence, our personnel. We also know, sorry, just going back to our assets, because we've put the data in there, this is your data. Are they office sites, production sites, storage sites? Are they critical? That's your determination. Travel exposure. And it starts to come up with recommendations as well. And you've got a few prompts down here as well that you may want to do if you want to send a safety poll, for example. You may want to drill down on all of those alerts near the Baraka nuclear plant. And again, it's pulling all the information from sources that you trust to develop that information. And that point there really on the data is really key in this, because there is a drive to get AI into security operations. There's a drive to get AI in across all organizations. I think we're all familiar with that from a board level, a C-suite level, that we've got to get AI in. But when you're looking at this, it's a key point to check when you're looking at AI for security operations is what is the data that the AI is working with? Is it your data? Is it my data as the vendor? Or is it open web? If it's just on the internet, if it's just publicly available information, you're essentially dealing with a chatbot. You've really got to look at the tools you're using for operational AI. And this is really building on top of the information that you've brought in. So starting to wrap this up really. For operationalizing the alerting, the intelligence that Factal delivers so well, there are three pillars that you can start to build on. There is the software, as I mentioned. The software provides that precision. So if we take the example of an earthquake, moving away from the Iran Middle East scenario, right? How many people are within 50 kilometers of this earthquake? You want to know it is 47, not approximately 50. You need that precision. Software can do that. It can bring that information in. It can correlate where you've got people with where the incident has taken place, that location convergence piece. What AI allows you to do is then start to make sense of this. What should we do about it? Give me an assessment. Give me recommendations for the Middle East. Give me a sitrep that I can send to my other stakeholders. But the humans have to stay in the loop as well because the humans exercise judgment. We can see here that Rosa has produced some suggestions. It's up to you if you want to use those suggestions. Maybe you've got a specific task that you want Rosa to do. That's when the human comes in. You approve the response. You may want to override the AI. Ultimately, you are making the call that requires accountability. But when you're able to bring all of those three together, the software, the AI, getting your data right with the human intervention, you can enormously accelerate your response to situations like we saw in the Middle East. You can enhance the value that you're getting from your Factal alerting significantly because you're able to turn it into action within seconds and minutes, not within hours and in some cases days, as we unfortunately saw with a lot of organizations grappling with the Middle East. Conscious of time, and I know that we probably have a few questions coming in. So Brian, I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. It was wonderful to see the platform. It's really cool what you guys are doing and how you're bringing data together in one place. Um, One question came through is, does Restrata offer trials and or pilot programs, and how does that work?
Yeah, so we'd want to have a chat to the organization really about your needs and essentially figure out what the requirements are and we could certainly have that conversation with an organization. I think the key thing really is to derive value from it is we need to get data into the system. So that's what we need to be looking at. But it is, I think, probably worth saying that it's a modular system as well. So we support clients. We've got three sites in Iraq through to some companies where it's a full global deployment and everywhere in between.
Got it. That makes sense. We had another question come in. Can you train the AI on your internal policies so they know how you would specifically respond rather than a generic response?
Yeah, so if you've got your policies, your SOPs, your procedures, they can be stored in the system, and then the AI can interrogate that as part of the response and base the recommendations on what you've put into the data. So yeah, again, as I was saying, the crux is, no two companies are going to have exactly the same deployment because you're not going to have the same data in there. So short answer is yes, it can look at that.
Excellent. Any other questions from folks before we wrap up for the day? You're welcome to post them in the chat. Wait a second to see if any more come through. Tim, did you have any questions for the Factal side or anything else you wanted to address?
No, I'm good. I think, just obviously to the point you made earlier, Brian, if anyone wants to find out more, very happy to have those conversations.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining today. We really appreciate it. And please feel free to reach out to myself or Tim if you're looking to explore these solutions further. We really appreciate you jumping on, and we will provide a recording of the session to everyone who attended. Thank you so much for joining, and thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, everyone.